Hello, everyone. I hope you're keeping safe, social distancing, and staying indoors. As you can imagine, during these times, we've had to adapt and be innovative, and that's why I'm doing my interview from home. My guest today is Dr. Agnes Kalibata, the president of AGRA. She's also been recently appointed as the special envoy for the UN 2021 Food System Summit. Prior to AGRA, she used to be the Minister of Agriculture in Rwanda. Today, we'll be speaking on COVID-19 impact on our food systems, but most importantly, how as a continent we can work together to mitigate the further disruption of our food system. Join me. Dr. Kalibata, thank you so much for being here with us today. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, thank you. It's good to talk to you today.
How are you keeping safe? How is the lockdown in Nairobi?
It's a lockdown. What else can it be? We are all staying home and trying our best to stay sane while staying home and to continue working.
Okay. So today, I'm sure you've had a lot of discussions on how COVID-19 is impacting our food system, and that's what we're going to be talking about. But most importantly, how the continent, Africa, can work together as a continent to help mitigate the disruption of our food system. So we'll get into it. And I'll just be asking you a couple of questions. Are you with me?
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay. So we know food system is complex already, involving different stakeholders in different food chains. It's currently planting season in our continent. In most part of the continent, it's planting season. And we have received several reports of farmers not being able to get on their farms and supply chain interruptions affecting agricultural production. As the pressure mounts due to the lockdown, what bold creative steps can we take to ensure that farmers continues to work, secure food supply chain, and food production and availability?
So thank you so much for that question and for being proactive on organizing and talking about what is happening in the farming landscape in the wake of the COVID pandemic. African farmers are mostly smallholder farmers, but they are small individually. When it comes to how they work from a continental perspective, they're actually large. They supply 80% of the food that we eat. So if they don't farm during this COVID crisis, we will have a very serious challenge of food. So that's why I'm saying I'm glad that you're asking these questions and you're following up on these questions to raise the consciousness of the value of these smallholder farmers. So the question you ask around what we need to do, we need to recognize that even before the COVID crisis, we have a lot of people that are hungry. About 250 million Africans are hungry. We need to address that issue. But now with the COVID crisis and the planting seasons coming on, we need to ensure that we treat food and agriculture as critical. Health is extremely important in this area. We have to protect people. But we also have to understand that we need to do it and be careful to ensure that we have a plan past COVID, because if we don't, then our countries will be seriously affected. We don't have the type of stimulus packages to bail people out when things go extremely wrong. We don't have that capacity. Our economies are still pretty fragile and we can't afford that. But what we can afford today is to ensure that to the extent possible, the farming landscape stays open and people are walking in one at a time. We can have agro dealerships, those shops where people buy inputs, stay open and people will walk in one at a time. But we can also educate them around how to protect themselves, just like is happening with health. Everybody's educated on how to protect themselves while providing services. So we should be able to do that for the agricultural sector and ensure that these services stay open despite the COVID crisis. If we do it like that, there will be we will have the opportunity to ensure that farmers can farm, but also we need to do more. The typical ordinary way of farming, where farmers do whatever they can do with what they have, is not going to work. We need to recognize that our food systems are going to be disrupted. We get a lot of food from out of our continent. If some of these countries decide to hold their food because of the crisis, we will have a crisis that results from the fact that we can't import the amount of food we wanted to import as we have been doing. So the best bet right now is to ensure that our farmers have access to the right seeds, the right fertilizers, and as many people that can farm should be able to farm. We should basically do so much more than we've been doing before, because that is going to be necessary. We are going to have to depend on ourselves for food. I give you an example. A country like India that has naturally in the past had the capacity to feed itself with 1 year of reserves, today is talking about 5 months of reserves, because they are feeding many more people than they have ever had to feed. They had never thought that feeding people would involve something like a COVID crisis, where even people who are able to feed themselves because they work can't feed themselves because their jobs are disrupted. So it's going to be, we need to think about what will happen if we can't import the food we've been importing. The only way we can survive is to ensure that we double down on farming, and that can only be done by ensuring that farmers today have access to everything they need to do much more than they have been doing, to produce much more than they have been producing.
Thank you very much. To talk about importing food. So due to the lockdown and port closure, countries that rely on import or export of supply will be affected, and their currencies will probably plunge against the dollar. So now that we're talking about importing and exporting food, how can countries work together to maintain open trade, but review trade and tax policies to create a favorable food trade environment, like the countries in the continent as a whole?
So it's going to be extremely important and necessary for countries to understand that we are all depending on each other for trade and maintaining trade corridors. We already have existing trade corridors on this continent. So what has been good so far is that even as countries were talking about lockdowns, everybody was talking about maintaining cargo flows, maintaining, to the extent possible, maintaining trade flows. Yes, borders have been closed, but most of these borders have been closed with regards to restricting human entry and people entering for reasons that are not extremely essential. We already have existing trade corridors. We need to do everything to keep those trade corridors open. I need to underscore that the need to protect people will not go away. We need to be cautious and be protective of each other. But we can do this. And again, like I said, I'm happy to note that a number of countries have maintained cargo flows. This is one way of ensuring that we keep trade open. Here in Kenya, one of the challenges the government was having is getting insecticides for the control of the locust crisis because of the slowdown of cargo. And that type of slowdown is also going to impact food as well. So the issue is really to urge countries to try to do everything possible to maintain these trade flows flowing, because they are important to those countries, but also to the impact the neighboring countries that depend on them for food and for other essential commodities.
And that's one issue we definitely don't want.
It's definitely something. We don't want two things with regards to trade. We definitely are not prepared to start impacting each other from a lack of food resulting from locked down trade, but also we don't want countries that have traditionally traded with us to start holding and preventing food from going to other countries. Because this is not something we all thought through and prepared for. This is something that if one country holds and prevents food to another country, people will die. And we need to think through these things.
Thank you. So we already know you and I know about the challenges we have already in the agricultural sector. And now we have to deal with the devastating locust outbreak in East Africa. How can government, private sector, and development partners double down on their already proven resolve and significantly expand existing efforts to safeguard smallholder farmers, agribusinesses, and our food systems? What can they do collectively?
No, it's thank you, and it's very important. We talked about smallholder farmers, but let me talk about small businesses for a minute. I mean, from a food perspective, SMEs on the African continent handle 64% of the food that we eat on this continent. So if they don't do their business, then we definitely have a very serious challenge. But they also handle probably over 90% of how farmers access different services. But they provide jobs too. A significant part of the jobs that we have, both in the formal and informal sector, are provided by SMEs and related businesses. So these businesses are in danger of closing down because they don't, they depend on the resources they earn too. And with the close down or lockdown, most of these businesses have challenges maintaining flows and ability to maintain the people that they employ. This has been seen in from one city to another. The lockdown has definitely put forward a number of people that have lost jobs because businesses can't manage to continue. So that is something we see. Now, the good news is countries are extremely aware of that, are extremely conscious. They started out by trying to deal with the immediate being providing food for people that are being let off or don't have jobs. So this is good, but it's not. I don't know how long this crisis will stay for, and it's not sustainable. What would be really helpful would be to think through how to support these SMEs to survive this crisis, because we want them to survive. We want them to continue supporting people, but we want them to be there also so that they can spring back and be able to continue operating in the business environment. They are struggling with cash flows. They are struggling with resources. They need some form of stimulus. They need some boost. Now, the other good news is there are lots of packages that are being put in place. The World Bank has put forward about $12 billion. The African Development Bank has just launched an instrument, for lack of a better word, a challenge fund actually, for small businesses. The Mastercard Foundation is working with us and other institutions to launch support to small businesses. Lots of institutions, the EU has just put in place a 12 billion fund to support forward resources. The question is going to be how quickly we as governments put in place instruments locally for these funds to be accessible to these SMEs. Again, given the crisis we are sitting through. So I think being able to come up with creative ways to engage SMEs is going to be important. One thing that has been clear is that SMEs that were already working with the digital tools that can be able to reach their people using the telephone, because using the telephone is now a huge opportunity. Those businesses, I sit on a number of boards, and I've seen businesses that have the ability to reach out to people massively using digital tools are still working. So I think this is also an opportunity for businesses to learn how to reach people without necessarily being physically present. So we are going to have to do three things. Help educate these businesses on how to engage, but while staying healthy and protecting people. Help them access funding, and so that they can very quickly get access to some of these resources that are available and stay on board and stay afloat. But also help them understand that digitizing their systems is now not a major option. I mean, it's not an option. It's something that they need to be doing anyway, and there are tools that are available that can help them stay in business even under this type of circumstances. We need to take advantage of all these instruments. And again, I noticed that there are quite a number of instruments that have been put forward. I mean, it's not that we don't have a precedent to learn from. The 2008-2009 food crisis did present a situation where countries very quickly put in place instruments to deal with the food crisis. And we didn't really, on the African continent, we didn't really have a major crisis. because these instruments that were put forward, governments immediately deployed them and ensured that farmers had access to seeds and had access to fertilizers and really farmed. So we need to do this then. I know this is difficult and this is different because we're dealing with a pandemic that impacts people's health. But we need to be creative around that as well. You've seen Uber delivering food to people's doors, delivering all sorts of services to people's doors. I've seen here in Kenya something called Safe Border. It's a motorcycle business that is also doing the same, training people their own customer, they train the people that ride motorcycles to first protect themselves and protect other people, but also maintain business. Here, the Kenyan government has also put in place a village-based extension system where the extensionist has the first, is the first person that thinks about how to protect himself and the farmer while delivering seeds and fertilizers to farmers. So putting those type of instruments in place is going to be very critical to keeping businesses going. And again, there are lots of things to learn from. There are lots of examples, but there's also a lot of resources that we should be able to tap into.
Thank you very much. And without this stimulus package, we have to be careful with the economic challenges. It might actually impact Africa's GDP. So thank you for that. One of the things I also wanted to ask you, in these times, everybody's trying to protect their country. And we all know that economic growth in agriculture is 2 to 3 times more effective at reducing poverty and food security than growth in any other sector. How do we ensure we continue to see investments in agriculture sector? Because we know agribusiness is profitable, but we need more investments in the continent and in the sector. But also, how do we revive food production, build resilience following this crisis to ensure a more sustainable food system?
I guess what I can say here is, if there's one thing this crisis has taught us, it's the fragility of our food system. So our food system is extremely fragile, and we are extremely dependent on many other. We are. Let me put it differently. There's a lot of interdependence within our food systems, and we need to recognize that. So starting with the fragility of our food system, it means that we really need to invest in building resilience at different levels, at our household level, to ensure that our countries have the ability, our households have the ability to deal with food security issues. So investing in better productivity, investing in increased productivity for African countries, investing in strong agricultural system is not a choice anymore. It's something we need to do. So this has exposed and continues to expose the fragility of our food system, and we should take advantage and make sure that we are investing more resources in agriculture. The African continent has instruments and tools and has talked about this for the last 20 to 30 years, the need to invest in agriculture and strengthen our food systems, mostly because they also impact our security, but now they impact the very core of our economies, given what is happening today. So the imperative to invest in the agriculture sector has to be now, has to be clear to every country that has the ability to do agriculture, that we need to be investing in the agriculture sector, not just in production, but in all the way into value addition and processing and creating jobs. We can't have a situation where a pandemic like this throws us completely off board and exposes us to a possible food crisis if we don't do the right thing. So I think for me, we have the tools, we have the policies, we have the ambitions from a continental perspective and country level. We just need to do it. Today, the African Union on a 2-year basis does track what's happening in the agriculture sector and how inclusive we are in getting food to people, and how well we are reducing hunger based on what the agreements of the Marabu Declaration of 2014 came up with. So by 2025, this continent is supposed to be food secure. The question is, are we in a position to be food secure by 2025? If we look at what we are seeing now, hopefully we still have a few more years. Hopefully we will be in a position to say we have been able to strengthen and build our food security better, because we've been shocked into waking up to the realization that our food security and building of our resilience with regards to food security is much more important now than ever before. We can't depend on so many other people to feed us.
Thank you very much. So as we wrap it down, congratulations. You were recently appointed the UN Special Envoy for the 2021 Food System Summit. So what can we expect? But also, is this an opportunity for us to build back better? And what role can stakeholders play at the summit?
The Food Systems Summit, which was announced way before this coronavirus happened, was already recognizing that there's a very serious challenge within our food systems and how we are engaging in our food systems. One, we have the number of people that are hungry are increasing instead of going down. It's true that for a number of years, the number of hungry people are going down, but with the SDG 2 as the zero hunger target by 2030, and with number of hungry people increasing, we are definitely not going to be there in 2030. So the Food Systems Summit recognizes that we need to be doing things differently and at a different pace. We need to accelerate the rate at which we are engaging on food for the hungry, on nutrition for people who, for two reasons. We have a very serious challenge in nutrition. We still have seen cases of malnutrition that are increasing, but also we have a huge obesity, huge situation around obesity, where we have nearly 2 billion people that are obese worldwide. And most of these people are young people. And the death from obesity is increasing every year. And the African continent actually is one of the continents that is beginning to experience a serious problem of obesity. This has to be addressed. It has to be from a food systems perspective. Is our food system right for us and for our children? But more importantly now, we also need to talk about our environment. We now work in a period of climate change. The African continent has been reeling from one disaster to another, completely reducing our ability to produce food for ourselves and to ensure that we are food secure as a continent. That's why the number of people that are hungry has gone up. It's very clear that 75% of all diseases infectious diseases that we have are originating from animals. And this is a result of our encroachment on our environment and our taking our food systems further than we should. So here the imperative is very clear. We need to address the issue of our food systems and the balance between our food systems and nature, and what the implications are for our health, but also for our planet, and how we leave this planet better off than we found it for our children. So that's the real sense of the Food Systems Summit. And I hope that it's been delayed. The process of takeoff of the summit has been delayed by as you can imagine, by the corona pandemic, and people have been distracted. But in the last 2 to 3 weeks, there's a surge of interest because people are recognizing that in the first place, it's the fact that our food systems are broken that is leading to this type of pandemic that we have. But more importantly, the realization of the weaknesses of our food systems is becoming apparent to everybody. So hopefully we can be able to address the food system can be able to address all these issues that we are talking about: the interconnectedness, the exposure, the lack of resilience, but also a better food system for ourselves as a people, and a better food system for our planet.
An opportunity for us to build back better than before.
Exactly, and to worry about our children. The human race has only been around for, believe you me, for the last 30,000 years. The world has been here forever. Yeah. So if we want our children to be here for the next 30,000 years, we need to do things differently. We definitely have to do things differently.
We have to act now and do better.
Yeah, and that's what the Food Systems is really about. The Food Systems Summit, I hope that the Food Systems Summit can address the question of what type of world we want to leave behind, and how do we create a balance between our existence and the existence of our world.
And that's an interesting thought for everybody to think about.
Yeah, I also appreciate you reaching out. Like I said, there are lots of efforts that have been put in place that should put us in a better place. I particularly applaud the effort by the chair of the African Union to appoint some of our eminent economists to worry about and move forward the conversation and the engagement around the corona pandemic and ensure that our countries have the right instruments. So people like Ngozi, people like Donald Kaberuka, and these are people that have worked far and near and have the ability to help us stay afloat as a continent. And I feel, and I'm sure that with these type of efforts and the efforts that are happening at country level and the efforts that we are putting in at farm level, we will survive this.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kalibata. I really appreciate it. Thank you for joining us from your busy schedule. I appreciate it.